Good evening, folks, and a warm welcome to you all, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us here on the Geelong Region Soccer Show. My name's Tonchi Prusak. I'm your host for tonight, and boy, have we got a show lined up for you tonight. A very special show. It's episode 7 of our 6th season, or if you're counting since day one, 132 episodes later. That's right, 132 episodes of bringing you all the latest news, the views, everything on our local game from a wider perspective. And we certainly hope you enjoy tonight's show because, as we said, we've got a massive show lined up for you tonight. Who's on the show tonight? Well, we'll be hearing from the Geelong Region Football Committee Chair, Mike McKINSTRY, the Regional Development Coordinator at Football Victoria, Simon Wrench. We'll also be joined a little bit later on by Steve GINOSKI, who is now, I'm told, the former Football Operations Director at Geelong Soccer Club, but he still has finger in the pie, so to speak. But he'll be also talking to us about a former teammate of his back from the old Geelong City days when they played in the National Youth League Southern Division. That's going back a long, long time. And we, of course, talk about, unfortunately, the premature passing of CHARLIE FITZPATRIck. Last Friday, Charlie was well known around the football circles here in Geelong, played for a numerous amount of clubs and also up in Melbourne as well. And towards the latter part of his life, he did become a bit of a recluse is the word, but he did battle a debilitating illness, and which eventually took his life last Friday. So some sad news, but we'll also do a little bit of reminiscing later on. So stay tuned, folks. One of the controversies, I guess, during the week after last week's show was the new format that is going to be rolled out this year, not just in the men's and the women's, but also the junior competition. So the first 4 weeks of the new season, which, by the way, kicks off this weekend, will be a grading phase. What's behind it? How is it operating? How is it working? Stay tuned because Mike McKINSTRY and Simon Wrench will explain all of that. So there's lots and lots coming up shortly, without a doubt. We'll also be looking at the weekend that happened, the media news, I guess, the media watch. We'll be looking at the local scene, the Victorian Premier League men's, the Victorian Premier League women's, as well as the state leagues as well. And there's some big results over the weekend. Stay tuned for all of that. None of this would be possible without our lovely, lovely sponsors, our business advertising sponsors, and indeed our major sponsor. So a big, big shout out to the Gordon, our major sponsor for season 2024. And also to all of our business advertising sponsors. In tonight's show, we've got Curva Coaching, Highland Turf Sales, and Birregurra General Store. Folks, don't go away. Straight after this, it's time for the News Desk.
Your future is in your hands. There is a whole world waiting for you, and your choices determine how you will impact it. At the Gordon, we recognise this. That's why we champion hands-on learning. Get your hands dirty. Grab what's in front of you. Learn by doing. Turn your passion, your ideas, and mould them into your creations. You'll be supported the entire way. You'll grow your skills in small classes, guided by teachers who are industry experts. You'll learn in state-of-the-art facilities or out in a real-world workplace setting. Your hands-on experience will increase your understanding and put you ahead of your university peers. You'll graduate work ready, and you'll graduate sooner, with a huge range of qualifications to choose from and support services to enable your success. Now is the time to continue your learning journey. At the Gordon, your future is in your hands.
That's right, time for the news desk, and we'll start off with Media Watch. Football or soccer has been quite prominent in the pages of the Geelong Advertiser and also the Geelong Times. So if we have a look at last Friday and last Saturday's editions, first of all, in the Friday edition, it was a preview of the big Surfside Waves versus Lara United game. There was a big clash, expected to be a big clash, and it turned out to be a very close contest. And then on Saturday, Soccer for Kids in a New Phase, which we'll be talking a fair bit about today. An article on Mike McKINSTRY, the chair of the Geelong Region Football Committee, talking about the boom in the local sport. And we covered that in last week's edition as well, so quite a fair bit to talk about there. Today, in today's edition of the Geelong Advertiser, Lions punch in 4 goals. The Geelong Soccer Club recorded its first win of the season in Men's State League 1. What a win it was, 4-0 against FC Strathmore on Saturday night at Stead Park. We'll be speaking a little bit later on in the show to Steve GINOSKI, who's the former football operations director, but he's still involved heavily there at the Geelong Soccer Club. He'll be coming on a little bit later on in the show. Now, might not be local football per se, but it is football. And in the Geelong Times last Friday's edition, there was a story there. Home final for United women, talking about the Western United women who were due to play a final at their new regional football centre at Tarnee. Any publicity is good publicity, as they say. And wouldn't it be good to eventually get to a stage where we have articles in the local press every day? And that would be the ideal. If we've missed something, if there's something in the Surf Coast Times or the Ballerine Times or anything like that, let us know as well. Drop us a clip maybe in the comments section, or even send us an email, communitysportsmedia@gmail.com. All right, let's turn our attention now to what happened over the weekend. And let's turn our attention to the top of the pops, the Victorian Premier League. So the men's competition played on Saturday, the Victorian Premier League women's on Sunday. On Saturday, North Geelong continues its disastrous start to the season, 3-0 loss. That wasn't against Eastern Lions. That was actually against the Bentley Greens away, by the way. So it's incorrect there. We do apologise for that. Eastern Lions, they play Eastern Lions this weekend, but we'll get to that shortly. Geelong Galaxy, on the other hand, had a very good 5-2 win over Ringwood City in round 3 of the Women's Victorian Premier League. They find themselves in 3rd spot now, but Yamamoto got a double, Murray got 2 as well, and Huddett got 1 goal for the victorious Geelong Galaxy. This weekend, as we mentioned, it's a must-win game for North Geelong Warriors when they take on 3rd last placed Eastern Lions at home. The next 2 games are at home, so a must-win game, this one for the Warriors. They need to open their account very, very, very soon. The women's, that happens on Sunday, so if we turn our attention to that, round 4 fixture, Geelong Galaxy taking on Eltham Redbacks. That's at Hume Reserve. What happened with the men? Let's have a look. Okay, on Saturday, Corio, well, they drew with Whittlesea United 2-2 at home. As we mentioned just moments earlier, Geelong defeated FC Strathmore 4-0 for their first win of the season. Caleb Mikulich scoring 2 goals, Jai Spateri 1, and Dennis Deluri also scoring 1. And Deluri now, I think it's 2 weeks now in a row, he's scored a goal for Geelong. It might even be 3, actually. In State League 2 action, Geelong Rangers travelled to Albion Rovers, and Kai Williams was the only one who could score a goal there. 3-1 for Albion Rovers. Unfortunately for the Geelong side, they weren't able to record a win there. Then we move to State League 4. This is where all the action was. Bell Park, great win on the road against Barnstoneworth United, 3-0. Nick Nugent scoring 2 goals and Jake Krilich scoring 1. Surf Coast, a narrow but very valuable goal win away to Westside Strikers. Luka Jurkovic scoring a goal towards the end of the game. He's second in 2 weeks, and boy, was that a much needed goal right almost at the death. But Barwon, yes, you're seeing that correctly. At home against Keilor Wolves, it was billed as a top-of-the-table clash, and for whatever reason, Barwon stayed home. They did not even turn up to the game. A 7-0 thrashing at the hands of Keilor Wolves. Well, when we say they didn't turn up, they did turn up, but don't know what happened there. But hopefully, for the sake of Barwon and for the sake of Geelong football, Barwon can get themselves back up already this week coming. Surfside Waves and Lara United, a great close contest there at Shell Road Reserve. In the end, Lara United ran out winners and they maintained their 100% record at the top of State League 5. Marnaso scored again. I think that's his fifth goal now this season. Hard to keep track, but doing very, very well. And Lara United are on top. Let's have a look at this week's fixtures in Men's State 4. Coria at home to Westgate, a big game at Hume Reserve. That game's at 3 p.m. this Saturday. Geelong at home to Ballarat City, another massive game at Stead Park, 6 p.m. Folks, get yourself down to Stead Park. It's going to be a beauty, this one. Ballarat City are the team that is being touted as the title favourites, but Geelong are in very good form after that win over FC Strathmore at home, and they will be itching to make it 2 wins from 2 games. In State League 2, Keilor Park hosts Geelong Rangers. In State 4, Melton Phoenix hosts Bell Park. Barnes Soccer Club are away to Moonee Ponds United, a tough game there at JH Allen Reserve. And then a big one at home for Surf Coast at Banyul Warrior Reserve with kickoff at 5 p.m. The Coasters host Westbourne. In State 5, Lara, Friday night game at home, Lara Recreation Reserve, kickoff 8:30 p.m. So if you're not doing anything this Friday night, pop down to Lara. Great facility, that. Fantastic club rooms, great viewing area, under shelter, great floodlights. It's certainly worth getting in the car and coming up to the north there. Lara United hosting Tana United. And then on Saturday, another Geelong derby, this time Deakin Ducks hosting the Surfside Waves. Also, this weekend, we've got the start of the Women's State League. The Round 1 fixtures sees FC Clifton Hill hosting North Geelong at Quarries Park on Sunday at 3 p.m. And in State League 2, our 2 Geelong teams will both be in action. The Rangers will travel to AB Shore Reserve to take on Altona City. That game's at 3 p.m. And then Lara United rounding off a huge weekend at home for both its senior men's and senior women's teams on Sunday at the Lara Recreation Reserve at 3 p.m. Lara United will kickstart its State League 2 campaign with a big game against Altona East Phoenix. So moving right along, as we've already been speaking about, the sad news that CHARLIE FITZPATRICK passed away last Friday, and that's really sad news to hear. It's gone way too soon. He was 1 month younger than what I am, so it really hits home when you hear stories like that. To Charlie's family, and I do believe we may even have some of Charlie's family tuning in tonight. Our deepest condolences to you and to everyone who knew Charlie and to everyone who played with or against him. It certainly was a sad bit of news, but we're going to celebrate his life, I guess, a little bit later on in the show with a little bit of a tribute. Folks, that leaves us at the end of our news desk. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll actually correct something that we said last week that wasn't true. So we will correct that, and then we'll also launch into get our first guests on.
Yep.
This is Estuary Reserve, home of the FC Leopold Football Club, the region's second youngest club behind the Armstrong United Pelicans. In last week's episode of the Geelong Region Soccer Show, it was mistakenly reported that the Greens would not be fielding a team in the senior women's competition this year. Thankfully, that is not true, as there will indeed be a team from Estuary Reserve taking part in this year's comp. That means there will be a total of 19, not 18 senior women's teams in the Geelong region. So if we have a look at the makeup of the women's competition, Group A has 6 teams, Group B has 6 teams, and Group C has, there you go, Group C has 7 teams. So FC Leopold are in fact taking part. So we're really, really happy to hear about that. And I guess one of the problems of why we missed it, there we go. That's the fixture list. And as we can see, at first glance, if you look very, very closely, it looks like there's 6 teams. But the reality is, right down the bottom, FC Leopold had the bye, and they didn't have. There was no logo, I guess, and that's been one of the problems, I guess. Has been the problem of communication from Geelong Region Football Committee or Football Victoria to the clubs, and then from the clubs down to the grassroots or down to the bottom. And look, there was one recent delegate at a GRFC meeting who said himself, he tried to look on the website, tried to find any information as to, where were the GRFC contacts, were the Football Victoria contacts for the region. So there's been a lot of talk about it in the past, that the communication side of things has left a lot to be desired. Well, thankfully, that is being addressed. And just recently, the Geelong Region Football Committee did a wonderful thing and launched the Football Geelong portal, if you like, the news portal. And eventually, the aim of this is to get a centralised information service for anyone that wants any news about football in the Geelong region. So there's the new website, footballgeelong.com, and bookmark it, write it down. As soon as you open it, you click onto the fixtures and results, and that will take you through to the My Game Day app, which has all the information, all the fixtures, all the ladders, all of that. Plus, if you scroll right up the very top, there's clubs, contacts for each of the clubs. So thankfully, something is being done to address all this, and that's couldn't come any sooner. But that's great news, and we do sometimes criticise both Geelong Region Football Committee and Football Victoria, but in this particular instance, things are starting to move in a very good direction. Well, earlier today, I caught up with Mike McKINSTRY. He's the chairman of the Geelong Region Football Committee, and also Simon Wrench, who is the recently appointed Regional Development Coordinator at Football Victoria. Let's hear what both of the gentlemen had to say in this rather extensive interview about everything that involves football in Geelong.
Well, we're here at Shell Road Reserve in Ocean Grove on a Monday afternoon, believe it or not. When most people are in their offices working hard, these two gentlemen in front of me are getting the season ready, working behind the scenes, and there's a lot to get done because the local league season kicks off this week, and we've got Mike McKINSTRY, the chair of the Geelong Region Football Committee, and we've also got Simon Wrench, who's the Regional Development Coordinator at Football Victoria. Gentlemen, first of all, thank you for coming on the Geelong Region Soccer Show.
Welcome, Tonchi.
Mike, first of all, over to you. Tell us a little bit about the GRFC and what its purpose is for those that are uninitiated.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, the GRFC has been in existence for many years. It used to be the Geelong Regional Football Association, so it was standalone relative to Football Victoria. But about 12 years or so ago, there was a bylaw passed, and in fact, the GRFC is a committee that's affiliated with Football Victoria. So I guess what we try and do is coordinate things with all the presidents of the clubs, or representatives of all the clubs, the 20 plus clubs locally. And a lot of it is also advocacy and strategy. And we work very hand in glove with Football Victoria. And really, I guess what we're trying to do is really grow the game locally, not only in terms of its participation, but also in terms of its quality. And particularly for young kids, we really want to make playing football a quality experience.
Now you deal not only with Football Victoria, you deal with various tiers of government as well, particularly local council as well. And we've seen, particularly in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, a lot of investment has been put into club rooms. I was out at FC Leopold just moments earlier, and it's incredible what that's happened. We've seen what's happening at Bell Park Sports Club as well. But it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? As the game's growing, so too is the the intensity of negotiations required, etc. How does that developing?
Well, look, I mean, the clubs have historically, if you like, represented themselves as they can and should. And they've done a great job through talking to local government politicians to get support for their individual club. And 10 out of 10, and the examples you've just quoted are fantastic. I guess in recent years, the GRFC is becoming a bit more proactive, I guess. Rather than just leave it to the clubs where appropriate, we're stepping in and backing up that communication with, for example, City of Greater Geelong and the other 5 local government associations to really focus them in supporting investment ongoing for the region. Not just the individual clubs, which they can keep doing, but also, for example, at some point in time, we really want to get a regional facility. I was up last year at the Country Championships in Ballarat, sitting there in their fantastic regional facility. Here we are, Geelong, we're almost twice the size of that, and we don't have a regional facility. So I think what you're saying, Tonchi, the grassroots is really where it happens. Each of the individual clubs needs support, and good on them. But also I think there's a need for a focus on the regions. And I guess recently GRFC in the last few years we're becoming a bit more, I guess, proactive and a bit more strategic. So although we're here at Surfside Waves, there's a plan for Surfside Waves to move. Simon and I personally have been involved directly with the council in assisting Craig and the Surfside Wave team to try and ensure they've got adequate investment for the future. So we are becoming more active and more proactive. And we've also launched a G21 strategy, as it's called, that's now been adopted by all the councils. So it's all beginning to come together.
Excellent. We've also got Simon Wrench here. Simon, you've been appointed the Regional Development Coordinator for this area, and in fact the wider area of Geelong. First of all, Simon, thank you for coming on the Geelong Region Soccer Show podcast. But tell us about your role and also a little bit about your background, because you've been heavily involved in grassroots football in the past.
Yeah, being local, it's been an interesting journey for myself. But in response to all the challenges and the incredible growth we're seeing in the region and the needs of the clubs and the work we can do to support the facility development, the growth of the game, the pathways for the juniors and seniors, and working hand in glove with Mike, Football Victoria created a role where it was mostly, my role now is around advocacy, strategy and direction, working hand in glove with the clubs. So it's very much clubs focused. It's like working with the clubs, working with the committees, working with the coaches, working with their desires and strategic plans for the future. For me, it's been an interesting journey because I was a president of a club for nearly 7 years. I've been a player, I've been a coach. I'm still coaching, I'm still supporting junior development and talent creation, and so it just kind of felt nice to be able to get a role that kind of marries sort of my background in business and consulting for over 30 years, the game itself, and then being able to work with the likes of Mike strategically in the clubs and then grow the game locally.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, gents, I guess we talk about Mike, first of all, to you. In last week's Geelong Advertiser, there was a great article about the boom in local football, and I guess some of the numbers are outstanding. Like the juniors, the boys division has increased, overall boys division, by 30%. The girls even more so, by 32%.
Yep.
Senior women's has increased from 15 to 19 teams, and in the intro we talked about FC Leopold, which we failed which we omitted last week. But that with that huge growth, with that incredible growth, comes a lot of growing pains, I guess. And one of the things that Football Victoria has often been, I guess, criticised in the past is the competition structure. Now this year we've got a very unique competition structure that seems to address all those problems. Let's talk about that. First of all, let's talk about the senior men's and the senior women's. How did that all come about? And tell us a little bit about the competition structure for this year.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, some of the people watching the show might know historically how it operated. Effectively, every year. Clubs went through the process of, player registrations and then working out the number of teams they're going to have, and then submitting all that to Football Victoria competitions. That was all consolidated from around the region. And then, let's be honest, Football Victoria tried to do a good job and then coming back with a competition structure that made it work. And it was all sometimes a little bit last minute when it all comes together. Sometimes teams pull out, you had to redo the structure. There's a lot of feedback we picked up from the clubs that said, look, we need to do something different. So what we did this year is we actually said, well, before we just pile it all into Football Victoria, why don't we as the GRFC and reps from all the clubs come up with a structure that we think is going to work and then propose that to FV. So iron out all the bugs, particularly both at the adult level and at the junior level, because one of the bits of feedback at the junior level is that you don't want to have, and I've talked about this previously, kids walking out and winning 10-0. The kids that are winning 10-0, frankly, aren't learning anything. It's a walk in the park for them. And equally, the ones that are getting beat 10-0 are just demoralised. They're not learning anything either. So we want to equalise the structure. So we've done a grading system, which we're applying this year to both the adults and the kids. And that way you can have like an under 12A, under 12B. So if you've got younger kids that don't quite make it through to that full next level step up, and then, in fact, with this year, we've actually gone the other way. We've gone under 11, 13, 15, and 17. So it's the odd numbers. And that way, because we've got A and B, then we can grade the kids. They get a much better football experience. And then then next year, maybe if they haven't quite made it through the B, they can maybe next year move it up to the A. And a lot of that was in response to feedback from the clubs saying, look, we really need to do something different. So we just bit the bullet and said, right, let's just take responsibility for this as a group involved in the clubs and propose it to FV. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, brilliant. Simon, you've played at senior level. You're coaching, as you said, you're still coaching. You've been a club president at Barnhead's soccer club in the past as well, and now you're an administrator, football administrator. So you're very probably the perfect person to comment on this. What's your take on the senior men's and the senior women's adopting, well, let's call it a World Cup style format in the grading phase? And then, first of all, let's talk about that.
I think I think I'll go back to Mike's point before. How we came to this point was an incredibly encouraging collaboration process between the clubs, FV and the Geelong Regional Football Committee just coming together to look at what were the needs of the actual competition and where there were sort of shortcomings and the like in the past. And one of the biggest key themes that kept coming out was consistency and predictability of what the competition could be. And that was all the way through from seniors through to juniors, and for clubs to be able to plan appropriately. So we had 3 or 4 workshops, and they were incredibly good workshops. I felt really privileged to be there and listen to the club's needs and then be able to say, how do we form this together into a system that actually creates that consistency, predictability, and an evenness in the competition? That's where the grading idea came about. And it's right. The idea is to encourage 4 rounds of grading, and we have it in like a World Cup format. And then for the first year, it's a nomination process, but the subsequent years from there will be based on their final placings from the previous year. And then those will enter those different pools each year. And we have 4 games. They'll be playing different group teams from different levels. And then it gives us a really good picture of where those individual teams are at on a yearly basis. Yep. Where in the past, it relied on nomination and I've lost 5, 10 players, so I really just want to go Division 3 now, where now they can be graded appropriately and they may actually be better than they think they are, then maybe they are right. They will end up in the right place and playing at the right level and getting the right experience.
Well, what's been the initial reaction from clubs, from maybe players? I know after last week's show we had a couple of comments on in the chat lines and things like that, but obviously people maybe weren't in the know, and this is a good opportunity to kind of educate them. But what's been the general sort of consensus now that we've had the fixtures released for about a week or so? Yeah, I've had some very positive feedback, Tonchi. I feel the clubs are and the individual, any change, people have to take a little while to get used to a new format. But I think once it's explained in terms of the intentions behind the new format, how it came about with the collaboration of all the clubs, presidents, coaches, developers, development staff in those clubs, it allows us now to have a competition that is more stable, more predictable, and especially when we start thinking about men's, women's, and men's, seniors, and women, we really wanted a consistency in, say, that Division 1, Division 2, where we always have a set number of teams. They're all
appropriately graded, so they're always going to be competitive. And we're going to have no blowout games, so it's a much more enjoyable product for the individuals to be playing and coaching on. And so for me, that was the overall response has been very positive, because they're still getting the same amount of football. They're just going to come out and now see the fact that they're going to be playing competitively each week, and they're going to be challenged each week.
Yeah, no, awesome. Now, I don't know which one of you gents would be best to answer this question, but how will the format be decided for your subsequent Divisions 1, Division 2, Division 3? Is it the top team goes into Div 1, second in each pool group goes to Div 2, or is there a different criteria being used?
Yeah, there's slightly different criteria. It's a fairly complicated mathematical process. There is actually a strategic document that is available to clubs and players that can have a look at, which documents the entire process on how it came about and how each of the grading steps work. But ultimately, each pool, yes, so the top of each pool, they will be going to Division 1, second will go to Division 2, 3, and so forth, until we reach our numbers that we're looking for in each division. We're looking for consistent numbers in Division 1, so we're looking for the 8-team minimum, and then we have 8 to 10 teams in Division 2, and then Division 3 is a little bit more open to allow new and younger sides to come in as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. We're going to take a little bit of a short commercial break, and when we return, we'll be speaking with Mike and Simon just about the overall growth of the game and just accommodating that incredible growth.
Fantastic service, food and coffee, well-stocked produce and groceries at very reasonable prices. 5 stars for the coffee served, beautifully made latte, everything you need in this wonderful little shop. Staff are always friendly and helpful, an absolute treasure to the community. These are just some of the glowing comments of praise by both regular and first-time customers of the iconic Birregurra General Store. The De Cunto family, well known in Geelong football circles, has run the iconic Country General Store since 2020, and apart from providing top quality service, they, along with their extremely pleasant and friendly staff, make sure that everything you could possibly need is well stocked and always available. Located at 59 to 61 Main Street in Birregurra and open all 7 days a week, the Birregurra General Store is open from 6 a.m. each weekday and 7 a.m. on weekends. If in Birregurra, pop in and say hello to Steve and Angus.
Okay, we're back here at Shell Road Reserve. I'm speaking with GRFC Chairman Mike McKINSTRY and Football Victoria Regional Development Coordinator Simon Wrench. And there's a reason, gentlemen, why we're here on a Monday afternoon, and it's a beautiful sunny Monday afternoon. But you guys were moving goals around for the Mini Roos, which starts this year.
Well, some of us were. He wasn't.
I just came in for the glory.
Mike, that's something we haven't really talked about, the growth of the game. We talked about the seniors, that's fantastic. We talked about the juniors, incredible. But the Mini Roos is another element that's just growing exponentially.
Absolutely. I mean, across the board, I mean, in broad terms, the numbers you quoted earlier, 30 in the boys and 32 in the girls, so roughly 30% growth in the game. That's fantastic. And let's not forget the Matildas, I think, has had a big impact. You know, not only has it encouraged growth in the female game and the girls game, but actually, I mean, how many people saw kids at the Matildas with young boys with Matilda tops? It really gained momentum in regardless of gender, and I think that's fantastic. And the girls' game is becoming far more competitive, which is great. You know, so we're seeing big growth in the numbers, and I just think things like the Mini Roos structure that we've had to put in place is really trying to accommodate that growth. And the reason why I'm doing goals this morning, we've just been carting them all around and assembling them, is we're trying to take the burden off the clubs to make it easy, where we've got the hub system where it goes from one hub over 2 weeks in a row, and then it goes to another one, and that way it's like a little mini competition. And part of the logic for that was to make it a bit of a vibrant environment for families to come along and really enjoy. But the other thing, to be honest with you, was part of the design was to allow the clubs to then get a bit of income, so they can open up and sell pies, chips, whatever, and they'll have much more income coming in rather than normal home and away structure. So there's been a lot of thought going on. We reintroduced it last year. There was a few bugs that we ironed out, and we're putting it back in place this year. But overwhelmingly, the feedback we've had from families is very, very positive.
Now, Simon, I guess back in the day when you were president of Barwon Soccer Club, the Mini Roos hubs, they were all encompassing. So they had the under 7s, the under 9s, under 11s, all under one spot. It was a big gala, but slowly it became too big. The under 11s started breaking off. And now we've got to a stage where it's just absolutely massive, and we just don't have the manpower, we don't have the facilities to accommodate it all. How's Football Victoria and GRFC and the clubs themselves, how are they preparing for this explosion of growth?
Yeah, great question, Tonchi. I think to reiterate Mike's point about the Matildas effect, I think that's had an incredible effect on our mini-roos in all family demographics. Part of my role is also looking at equity to ensure that we are equalising the game and that accessibility and fair access is given to all genders and socioeconomic individuals. So that's really important. But from a perspective of growth, it's quite outstanding. We had a few challenges this year where different to previous years, where the growth has been so substantial that we are now having to look at different solutions. And one solution we've come up with this year where, as a working committee, which was great because the collaboration has been incredibly consistent between us. It's not just one party making a decision over another. We've actually worked very closely as two areas of Football Victoria and the Geelong Regional Football Committee and clubs to gather feedback. And we had a working committee that then decided for the southern region, we had to divide the under-7 hubs and the under-9 hubs. So we're having 2 host clubs each week, or each for every 2 weeks now. So, but one consideration was we looked at all the pros and cons. There's invariably the issue where families have one child playing 7s and one playing 9s. It does open up the opportunity, of course, for a under-7s child who's actually capable physically and able skill-wise to join maybe their sibling in the under-9s. But if that's not the case, what we've managed to do, and we've sat down with our Football Victoria competitions team, and we spent a lot of time working out proximity. So, for example, we have Surfside Waves hosting the first under-9s hub this weekend, and there's some co-hosts are Bowenheads. So we kind of keep that proximity, and that's in the planning.
Yeah, literally just the bridge separating the 2 townships.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, Tonchi, I think the other thing is if you kept it all in the one location, we've heard feedback from families that they've obviously got life to live with the kids, but they want to try and finish it traditionally by 1 o'clock. If we kept all the hubs and all the age groups in one area, it's probably going to run through till about 3. That has an impact on families going, hang on a minute, we've been here forever. And then the other thing is we then start to domino into the other competitions, including the seniors that start to play at that time. So we took that into account and said we're going to have to compromise somewhere because the growth in the game is going to give us a little bit of growing pains. Yeah. But let's be sensible in the way that we plan it so that from a family's point of view, that within Cooey to drive between Barwon-Heads and Ocean Grove, for example.
Yeah. Right. Now, Simon, I guess when we talked about the growth of the junior numbers and 30% basically increase in both boys and girls, now this is astounding. This is not taking into account that there's a numerous amount of local clubs that are entering teams in the Metro competition. Yeah, Surfside Waves, Surf Coast, Geelong Rangers, and these are just teams outside Pariah, I think, just teams outside of the NPL system. So there's a big growth overall. So the 30% might even be higher than that. Is this reflective of the situation across Victoria, or is Geelong quite a unique growth area?
I think it's fairly reflective, Tonchi, across the entire state at the moment. I don't have all the final numbers, but for talking to my colleagues who do similar roles in different regions, regional growth is phenomenal right now, and especially in the girls' game. It really is driving a lot of change. But yeah, it's very much reflective. There is a high demand for different levels of competition, different opportunities and different formats. So we're also seeing a lot of growth in different formats as well. So your football 7s, your 5v5s, your 3v3s, your Go Soccer Mums. So we've got a lot of social football being happening as well that doesn't get counted into some of those numbers either. So we're sort of having to look to see how we accommodate that growth as well, but it's certainly indicative across the state.
Yeah. Mike, so if the growth of the local grassroots sport is so incredible, and we talked about the facilities, particularly at the community clubs, is on the improve, and let's call a spade a spade. It is getting better than definitely. It was maybe 5-6 years ago. The one thing that we do lack is kind of that elite level, and you touched on the regional soccer facility. What about, I mean, we've noticed a lot of I guess private academies that are kind of starting to take things at another level, which is we've got Kerber Coaching, which is one of the show's sponsors. We've got Football Stars Australia. We've got a couple involved, I think, up at Geelong Rangers as well, which is really good, and it's probably filling a gap as far as that elite development. But at the end of the day, it comes back down to facilities, and we've got a great facility at the Leisure Time Centre, but it just seems to be not enough. In that area of elite facility development or facilities, Where are we at with regards to the idea of a regional or a sub-regional facility?
Yeah, well, it's not. You might know it's not new news. It's been talked about for quite some time. And certainly, I mentioned about the G21 strategy that we did, and we published that to all local governments, and they've now actually put it to each of their council meetings, and they've adopted it / noted it, whatever the terminology is. So they're aware of the strategy, and contained within that strategy is the opportunity for a regional facility. And there's been a lot of discussion. For example, City of Greater Geelong have had it on the agenda for a while. So what their strategy is reinforcing the need for that. The way I sort of view it, I guess, though, is for me, a regional facility is kind of like, a cherry on the cake or icing on the cake. For me, there's not a lot of point in having a bright, shiny facility if all the local facilities are rubbish. So the actual grassroots is, in some ways, where it's important. Bake the cake first and then decorate it with icing. And that's why it's great that, there've been investment. You mentioned examples, Bell Park, etc. Surfside are going to get some investment coming up now as well. I think that's where the action is. However, when you get to a position of the growth that we're at, we need regional facilities so we can run competitions and stuff like that. The country championships we hosted a couple of years ago, it would be lovely to host that in one location and be a showcase for people to come from other parts of regional Victoria and go, gee, Geelong are really kicking it along there. Whereas at the moment we're actually coming from behind. Some of the other regional areas are actually ahead of us in that regard. So I think it's important. But I think the other thing I've talked before about is the difference between that IT analogy about investment in hardware versus software. Facilities is one thing, but I think one of the gaps is actually coaching. And I don't mean coaching kids. The Curva programs and so on are fantastic. Big tick, as you said, that's because there's a gap in the market, if you like. The thing that I think we've got to put more energy in is coaching the coaches. Yeah. Because most people who become a coach, either they do have a soccer football background or they don't. If they don't, then they do the best they can because they might be an AFL guy by background or whatever. And there's a guy who would try to do a bin there, wouldn't he? But so what we're trying to do is really highlight that as an issue that says the strategy is going to be all encompassing and coaching and getting that level up to a point, to some extent, where families don't feel the need to drive up the road to Metro because the standard of quality of the game here locally is at a level that the kids get real enjoyment, they get real development, and families aren't driving all over the place. But if they want to do the Metro, that's fantastic. But we want to raise the quality of the game locally as well to give them choice. So.
Brilliant. Simon, now over to you. And I guess one of the things is that you deal a lot with the club capacities or the capacity of the clubs. And we spoke to Colin Drain a few weeks back. They've got 600 plus players, which is a record. We spoke to Tim Santalucia on one of our first episodes where they've got record numbers as well. And all throughout the region, the clubs are just bursting at the seams. And at the moment, it seems to me that either the clubs just can't grow anymore, or if they are going to grow, they need to start really kind of becoming almost like super clubs. Now, last week we heard about Horsham SC. They're a new club that have been admitted into the Southwestern Victorian Association down in Warrnambool.
That's correct.
Kind of your jurisdiction area. What's your take on it? Are there other clubs at the moment at bursting point, or can we invest in those clubs to make them even bigger, i.e. super clubs, or do we need new clubs in the region?
Tonchi, it's a great question, and as we said before, it's not a bad problem to have. It means the game's thriving. However, I think the answer is all of the above. I think we need to consider all aspects to where clubs' current facilities, pitch availability, concurrency times, how much usage they can get onto those pitches. Then we're talking about volunteers and coaches. Do they have the capacity to have enough coaches and volunteers to run those clubs and deal with that expansion of players? I think from my investigations and conversations with clubs, there's certainly a number of clubs at capacity, and it's often due to those three factors, which is just not enough time and space to house training sessions and games, not enough coaches just to keep up with the demand of the amount of teams. And so that's one aspect. So they're at capacity. So some of those clubs may need to form into a super club, which may require them to have to look for more facilities, may require them to restructure slightly to be able to, take on more players in a different way. We don't know what that looks like yet. That's the sort of conversations we're having on an ongoing basis with clubs. The other thought is there are some clubs that still have a little bit of ceiling room, so they can actually fill those clubs. So what we're encouraging at times is, where appropriate, have clubs engage with each other and say, look, we've got a little bit of room here where we want to put in an under 13 girls team, but we've only got half the players that we need for it. I hear you might be, oversubscribed. You have a wait list. Is there any way we can collaborate and have those players come over and play for our clubs? So that we're actively encouraging that collaboration as well, where clubs do have some capacity. Part of the Club Changer program that we've been rolling out in the region, where 18 of the 20 clubs are now on board as one-star Club Changer clubs, which is we can talk about another time, but it's very encouraging. Part of that is about addressing capacity and what are the strategic actions that a club can take and how do they work together with other clubs. And probably the third part of that answer is yes, there is always opportunity for new clubs. Applications come in, they are considered on an annual basis. Our region hasn't had as many as Metro in recent times, but I'd expect that to change soon. And as part of that entire process, there's a lot of work that goes on between Football Victoria, GRFC and the clubs themselves during that application to see whether they're a viable fit, whether they're in the right location, and then they've got a good offering for our kids and parents.
Yeah, Mike, we've got some growth areas, some spectacular growth areas around the region, and in various tasks and jobs that you've done, you're obviously across that as well. So there certainly is room for that. But I guess further on to that, with growth, big growth, there's always one of the problems, and it seems to have been an ongoing problem within the Geelong football community, is communication, or communication being disseminated in various ways. And at the GRFC, you have club delegates who go back to the clubs and then they pass on the information, but sometimes it doesn't get down to the bottom. You're addressing that, or when I say you, the Geelong Region Football Committee is addressing it with this new portal. We spoke about that, or mentioned about that earlier. But tell us more about it, because, look, at first glance, it looks like exactly what the region has needed, an all-encompassing, centralised news information portal.
Yeah, look, exactly to your point, Tonchi. I mean, look, we know that in clubland, everybody's volunteers, people are busy, and sometimes the cascade of information to the grassroots is challenging. A lot of it's done historically, for example, on email. We all have full emails. Sometimes we miss stuff. Relying on club presidents and others to actually cascade that so everybody knows doesn't always work, let's be honest. So we just said, look, we've had a lot of feedback about I didn't know, even though the information has been published. So we've actually, rather than rely or piggybacked on the back of a Football Victoria website, we've actually created our own here in Geelong. So it's called footballgeelong.com. Simple. You go there, it's a portal, it will actually have everything in there, and it will shoot you off by links through to FV, for example. So we're not recreating things, we're actually using it as a bit of a clearinghouse. So people say, oh, I don't know where to go. Jump in there, footballgeelong.com. There's what I'm looking for. Right, I can now follow a pathway and get an answer that I'm looking for. So that's something that we've just launched, and we will enhance that going forward. And we've also engaged a small organisation here in Geelong to help us with our social media strategy. So we're going to become far more proactive on Facebook, Instagram, etc. And that way we'll be getting information out to people. They can click on, again, footballgeelong.com. It will tell them about the country championships. It will tell them about current events, and it will direct them what's going on with fixtures, and then we can get stories and so on that you've helped with, for example, with local Addy, etc. So we're really just becoming, I guess, more, frankly, professional and proactive, because if we're going to grow the game like this, then we need to grow the way that we go about handling the game. We can't just do everything by email in the way it used to be done. So we bit the bullet and said, let's grab the bull by the horns and become a lot more professional and proactive. So hopefully over the next few weeks, people will see that beginning to happen. But if you haven't had a look on footballgeelong.com as a start point, and hopefully you'll see a good start point there for what we want to do going forward.
Well, gentlemen, thank you both for your time today. And with the start of the Geelong Region local leagues, the junior competitions, the women's state leagues as well across Geelong and the region, it's going to be a massive, massive year, and we look forward to it. It's going to be exciting times ahead.
It will be.
Thanks, Tonchi.
The world is yours. So work hard, and you can have whatever it is you want.
Welcome back to the Geelong Region Soccer Show. It is episode 132. He was described sometimes as enigmatic, mercurial, gangly and uncoordinated, unorthodox. But whichever way you looked at it, CHARLIE FITZPATRICK was one of the best strikers going around at the time. And certainly he was one of those people who was larger than life in many, many ways. And he was like a true Scotsman. Very strong, very aggressive, and boy, could he play football, and certainly in the final third. He made such a profound impact on many local clubs, including Geelong Rangers, Geelong City in the National Youth League, Geelong, Corio, St Albans, and Green Gully, Melbourne, as well as Altona City, North Geelong, and at the Breakwater Eagles, where he also coached. Towards the end of his life, he battled that debilitating motor neuron disease, which ultimately took his life last Friday. But Charles Fitzpatrick certainly will leave a lasting legacy here in Geelong football circles. Sad to hear. And when I think about it, I mean, Charlie was, a month younger than me when I think about it. So there you go, telling you how old I am. It does hit home, and we hear a lot of these stories these days, gone well before their time, and it's sad to hear. But today we're going to pay a little bit of a tribute to a player that certainly had a lasting impact on the Geelong football community. And we're going to remember some of the stories, and one of these teammates back in the Geelong City days, and that's going back a long, long time, the National Youth League Southern Division days, was a man who's also very well known in Geelong football circles. He was, up until recently, the football operations director at Geelong Soccer Club and still is heavily involved, and that's Steve GINOSKI. Steve, an absolute pleasure to have you on the Geelong Region Soccer Show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Tonchi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Well, first of all, let's talk about CHARLIE, because we were talking off air earlier tonight, and you were telling me some memorable stories of CHARLIE back in the day when you played youth league football together. But they were incredible days. I mean, Geelong was on the national stage at national youth league level. North Geelong had a team. Geelong City had a team. What do you remember about those days, and in particular, playing alongside CHARLIE FITZPATRICK?
Look, first of all, I just want to pass on my sincere condolences to CHARLIE's family. I know it's tough times. It's a tragic thing for someone so young. But yeah, CHARLIE, what can we say about CHARLIE? I feel a bit humble talking about him tonight because there's so many other people in our football community that will have memories and stories of playing and being around CHARLIE. If you were around back in the 90s, everyone knew CHARLIE. Like you said earlier, he was larger than life. He was very, very well known, not just for his football, but he was just a genuine good guy. He was much loved, and he was one of those football characters that everyone knew. He was a top lad. I got along well with CHARLIE. He was a mad Celtic supporter. He was cheeky. He loved a joke. He loved to have a laugh. He liked to drink. Typical, Scottish sense of humour. But on the field, mate, the guy was a firebrand. He was a fantastic player. And I don't say, when people pass on, they become legend. But this is all, this is all true. This is my experience with CHARLIE. He was a proven goal scorer. He scored goals everywhere he played. In his prime, probably one of the fastest players that I've ever seen in Geelong. Fierce competitor on the field. He's a guy that you wanted to be. You wanted him on your team. You didn't want to be playing against him.
Yeah.
So look, I've had a few, chats with people over the weekend that knew CHARLIE as well. And like I said earlier, there's probably people more qualified to talk about CHARLIE than myself. But from my experience, he never held back. Even on the training pitch, he was. There's stories about back in those days. We didn't have bibs. We weren't supplied with bibs at training. So you're either on the darts or the lights, right? So people would bring two tops to training, and see what Charlie's wearing. They wanted to wear the same one so they weren't on the opposition. They want to get lumps kicked out of them. So he was mate, he left it all on the field. He was a fierce competitor.
Now, mate, off air, you were telling me this very, very funny story back at the Middle Park, the old home of South Melbourne Hellas, when the Geelong City Youth team took on South Melbourne in the National Youth League. And tell us about that story, because it's an absolute ripper yarn, that one.
Yeah, that would have been back probably in 1990, 91. I reckon I was about 15. Charlie's, I reckon, about 3 years older than me, so he would have been 17, 18. And that was back in the days with, Roy Hay, and it was an amazing concept that, Roy Hay, I think, brought to life with having a Geelong representative team playing in the National Youth League. We were playing every second week. We were playing away, and we were playing at, stadiums. We played at, Melbourne Knights. We played at South Melbourne, all the big Victorian stadiums. So we followed Sydney Olympic. So Sydney Olympic were, whenever they played in Melbourne, we'd play before them in the curtain raiser in the under-21s. And this particular day we were playing South Melbourne. It was the big Greek derby, South Melbourne versus Sydney Olympic. There was probably 15,000 people at Middle Park, yeah. And so we were the curtain raisers. So we played our game, and what would normally happen is we'd all stay back and watch the senior game. So what happened was, because there was such a big crowd, Charlie and I were we were watching the game, and then we looked around and the game had finished and there was no one there. Like we got a lift because we were, we didn't have licenses, so we couldn't see anyone. So we're walking around in a bit of a panic. So we got left behind. It was really it was great parenting back in those days. So Charlie and I had to find our way from Middle Park Station to Spencer Street, and then get on a train back to Geelong. So yeah, that was just one of the memories of my days with Charlie. So
there you go. Well, we've got funeral details, and Brendan White, who was very close to Charlie, particularly towards the end of his life there. He did mention that the funeral for the late Charlie will be held this Thursday, 18th of April, at 11 o'clock at Crawford's Funeral Home on Coppards Road. And Brendan did send me a message just before we went to air, and he had this great story, and he'd say, and this is Brendan White talking about this. So effectively, they were playing for Coria. So Charlie, this is Brendan saying, Charlie would pick me up from my house when we played for Coria. He was player coach and got me across from Rangers. We would do our customary drive-through Oppie's. Now, get this, you wouldn't have this happening these days. Oppie's drive-through, which is the bottle shop in North Lane, where the Oppie's Bistro is there. When we had our Melbourne games, drink them on the way to the game to calm the nerves. Like I said, you couldn't get that happening these days. He would sometimes sub himself, so he's the coach, on with busted hamstrings, 15 minutes to go. He'd score 3 and sub himself off before the end, and then complain all the way home he should have had 4 or 5. That's a great story, and I'm sure there's lots of similar type stories like that. So thank you, Gino, for coming on and sharing your experiences with Charlie. But I guess now to modern day, you up until recently were the football operations manager at Geelong Soccer Club, and you still are involved. You were telling me you're still involved. You can't keep a good man down, but on the weekend, mate, a great win, first win of the season under new coach Ante Mordic, 4-0 over FC Strathmore. How was it? How did it must have been a great atmosphere under lights there at Stead Park.
Yeah, it was. We've been playing okay. We had a good pre-season. We sort of fell away a little bit, sort of towards this. We lost the cup game, and then sort of our season started. And we probably should have won our first game. Obviously, we didn't get the result in round 1, which was very disappointing. But we had enough chances to win that game. Last week we went across to Sydenham. They're arguably the favourites to win the league. Again, first half was theirs, and we probably should have they probably should have put the game to bed. But second half we came out and we did really well. We in the end we should have won the game. We had a lot of chances. We were pretty wasteful. So we were a bit disappointed if we took the second half, but we built on that second half last week, and then on Saturday night against Strathmore, it was a really good game for us. We played a controlled football, just what Ant has been, the style of football that he's been trying to enforce and to create at our club. The DNA, very very controlled, very possession based. We're playing out the back. It was brilliant to watch, and I spoke to a lot of people on the terraces, and it was a good crowd. There was a lot of locals, a lot of Croatian locals as well. So it was a good atmosphere. And look, we won the game, pretty easy in the end. So look, we'll build on that. We've got Ballarat this week. That's going to be a really tough game. Ballarat's a young side, very fit. Michael Trigger's got them playing a good brand of football. So, look, it's good signs for us. But we just, the old cliche, you take it 1 week at a time. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. And look, I speak to Auntie a lot, and he's saying, look, we won't hit our straps until probably round 6 or 7. We want to be a difficult side to play against, especially at home. Look, there's a lot to like about what we're doing at the moment. A lot of young boys that are getting opportunities. Guys like Jack McTaggart, who's come through our junior ranks. He's playing regular senior football. He started last week. I think he started round 1 as well. Jed Tanik, Xander Stojanovski is also getting a bit of a run. But it's really good to see. Auntie's putting faith in a lot of the young boys as well. And then we've got our more experienced guys. Dennis Deluri's come back to the club after a few years away. He's getting amongst the goals. Our Italian import, Giovanni Colosi, he's got a couple of goals. We're expecting to see a lot from him. And then obviously Caleb Mikulic, who's our marquee striker, where he got on the score sheet. He scored 2 on Saturday night, which was really good. Look, hopefully we build on that and we try and get a result against Ballarat on Saturday night.
Well, I'm looking at the ladder at the moment. Sydenham Park on 7, Westgate on 7, and then Geelong at the moment, Corio in 5th with 5 points, and Geelong 6th with 4 points. So only a win behind the leading mob there. So a victory on the weekend against Ballarat City. Michael Trigger, the old Geelong boy as well. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of motivation there from both ends. But it is a big game. That's 6 o'clock this Saturday. But finally, Steve, to everyone at Geelong Soccer Club, congratulations on the 16 boys qualifying for Division 1 alongside North Geelong in the Junior Boys National Premier League. That's a first for the club to have a team qualifying the Division 1. So that must be really exciting, and certainly it augurs well for the future of Geelong Soccer Club.
Yeah, look, it's exciting. It's as you said, it's a first time for us. It's history making for those boys, and look, we've been in the NPL system for since 2018. So it's 6 years. We had some COVID years there that didn't help, but we're building our program. We've got some stability with Andy Elderton being around for a while as a TD. Doing some really good things, good coaches, and it's we've got a lot of our mini roos. We've got a big pool of talent coming through there. So it's it all augurs well for us. But that 16s team, we're very proud of them. We're going to watch them with eager eyes. So It's great, and it's great for Geelong. North Geelong, two regional teams playing.
Absolutely.
At the top level of their age group. So it's fantastic for our region.
It is indeed. Well, Gino, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your little experiences with the late Charlie Fitzpatrick, and also giving us an insight into what is happening at the Geelong Soccer Club. Good on you.
Thanks, Donchi.
Bye-bye. Steve GINOSKI from the Geelong Soccer Club. Now, one last word about that funeral for CHARLIE FITZPATRICK. That is on this Thursday, 18th of April at 11 o'clock at Crawford's Funeral Home on Coppards Road, Newcombe. And to everyone who has tuned in tonight that normally doesn't, we hope that you will be tuning in on a regular basis. We will be back next Monday night. Lots of football happening this weekend. Do get out there while the weather's still relatively nice. We haven't hit winter yet, although the nights are starting to get a bit chilly. Do pop out and watch some football wherever you can. There's lots to choose from. Until next Monday night, 8 p.m., my name is Tonchi Prusak, and it has been a pleasure being with you. Good on you. Bye-bye.